Greetings, Pilgrims. Welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today we are going to be finishing up our inventory series. Now, there's a lot more to do here still, but I'm going to leave some of the minutiae to you. Let you guys take this and run with it and figure it out. We do have lots more episodes to get to, so for today we're going to be finishing it up, but I'll show you the new improvements that we've made and talk about the code changes and, of course, provide you the updated scripts. So, here we are in our test scene once again. We have one of each type of object here, and I just run over these and hit the appropriate key to pick them up. As you can see, they all work nicely. And we have a couple of new things. Well, our icons have been updated. We talked about creating the inventory tiles last time, so those are in here. But now the new changes are you can click and drag, and if you drop them outside of this area, they drop, which is neat. You can also click and drag and put them in a new spot, which is currently empty. So that's working. And then we can also click and drag to reorder them, and they will reorder each other. And we have our selected highlight here. So if I press 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., it's moving our frame, and the frame is going to highlight the one that we get to. Now, the highlight is essentially changing out those pictures that we said last time, and I'll show you how that works too. But the frame would tell you which item you have selected, and then from there you can call in code what to do in your game based upon that. So let's take a look at the scripts and take a look at what changed and take a look at all the settings we need to make. So first up was the big aha moment for me this week were our inventory slots here. So these slots are these invisible or almost invisible that are right here, these guys, and I put the color way down like this. So in my old script or my old project, when I had these and I was trying to get the drag and drop to work, they weren't working. I was wondering why, and it's because they all have to have this tag of UI static. So that's capital U, capital I, capital S, and then TATIC. UI static means it's part of the UI, but it's not going to move, and that's something that we can point at and have like an anchor to, right? But you cannot disable the image script because that's what is also the raycast target. I had these disabled, when really if you want them to be invisible but still work, just go into the color here and bring the alpha down. So you put the alpha to 0, they won't show up at all. I put it just a little bit just so you can kind of get a hint of where they are. Cool, and that's up to you, whatever color and everything. So that was one of the big fixes that we ran across. So there we go. Then we have this new introduction, this new item called slot frame. And this is essentially just another image. And what I did was I put it underneath the inventory UI object here. So just click and drag into there. And then I set it to start off with the first position here, -230, 0, 0. For this position, we'll put it right here. Then you click and drag it just outside of UI, inventory UI. So you see if I collapse this, the slot frame exists here. And its numbers are going to get funky. It's essentially 446 by -440. So the position of these things is relative based upon their parent. So when this was a parent of the inventory UI, which is this whole area, it had one position, but when you bring it outside and now it's a child of the canvas, you see the canvas's position is weird because of the way that canvases work. So it gets a little messed up, but that's okay. We have the slot frame, we drag it out, and it has its positions, but we're going to drive its position through code. So this is just an image, and I'll provide the image to you in the download link if I haven't already. You might already have a copy of it. That's okay. It's just an image, so create that image. And what I would do is first put it underneath the inventory UI, like any one of these, and set it to this, the -230, 0, 0. And then when you click and drag it just outside, it'll do like this. You see where it's kind of offset, a little bit shifted this way. When you collapse this whole section, you'll see that the slot frame is there by itself. And that's perfect. That's all you need. He doesn't need any kind of tag. He is set to UI because that's what he is, but we're all good there. Okay, so the next two changes that we made are in our coding. So for the BRS inventory and for our UI draggable. And the UI draggable, remember, is actually on the camera because that's what we need in order to click and interact with the screen. So let's take a look at the code for that. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the UI draggable, so we can drag back and forth with things. We made some changes to this and some important things to note. So down in here is the changes that we made. So here to add or subtract or to swap an item, there's some changes in here. I'm not going to go over all this in detail because this was a lot of work and a lot of craziness to get it to work, but I did try to leave some notes. So what we added to the code, and you can see I've left in the debug logs, but I've just commented them out so they don't show up in the console to confuse you, but they're there for you to read and understand kind of what's going on here. So when we click up on the mouse, what we're doing is saying, hey, if we call our boundary check, we're going to do a couple of things. We're either going to remove it from the inventory, so that's calling this function, or down here, we're going to do our swap, and so we're going to get our number, and then we're going to replace it, and we'll replace it here. So those are really the only two things. We're either going to update the inventory, which is the swapping. I'll show you that in a moment. Or we're going to remove it from the inventory. We're going to drop it. Those are the only two things. So down here, we have our actual boundary check function. And this is just checking that if our value is outside of these bounds, well, then we need to do something. And the bounds are defined up here. So this is the very super important part that I ran into this issue, and I had it working on my laptop. I brought it home, put it on the tower here, and it wasn't working. And I was like, well, what the hell? This is the same project. I copied the project and nothing worked. And it was these values that needed to change. So I'm going to show you how to check and set these values. So just down here under, where's dragging? Right here. If dragging, line 71 is your friend. So if you have an issue with this, here's what you do. Go to line 71 and uncomment this. Okay? And then we're going to save this. And watch what happens. When I hit play, now I'm going to run around and pick up an object. And now I'm going to click and drag it. And you'll see that now I have all these numbers filling up the console in the bottom left there. It's telling me the current position on the screen that I have my mouse cursor. So what you need to do is get the left, right, top, and bottom. So put your mouse cursor not on the edge here, but a little off the edge, so like here. So I'm looking at the bottom left corner now. It says 797. And then I'm going to go over here to the far left and say 1130. And then what's the top? 830, and the bottom, say, top here is 94, and the bottom here is 31. So the first two numbers, you're going to get the x coordinate, the left-hand number. So see the 796, and then way over here, I'm going to get 1130. But now for the top and bottom, I'm going to look at the y coordinate. So that's going to be 95, and then 31. So that's the second grouping of numbers there. Okay? So what do those numbers tell us? Well, when we put those numbers in up here, so our boundaries right here, we put those numbers in here. You see I have 800, 1130. Now the top and bottom are reversed, so it's 35 is the very bottom of the thing, and then 90 is the very top. I apologize about that. This should really be, I'll just change that now for you. Bottom and top. There you go. So bottom and top. So 35 at the very bottom, 90 at the very top. And that tells us, I give it a little bit of slop just so that it knows this is the total area that you're allowed to be in. Otherwise, I want you to drop it. Okay? Let's go down to our line 71. I'm going to comment this out again because I don't want all this to show up. Okay, so save. And now if we clear that and hit play, now it should all work magically and no issues and everybody's happy. And here we go. Bing, bing, bing. Pick up these objects. Drag and drop. Drag and drop, drag and drop. Okay, now, the other thing to note is, let's take a look at our mechanics. So if you look at here, you can actually see that the inventory is being filled properly. So if I hit pick up, so I have the first element, element 0, is filled with my wood resource, that's correct. Then light bullets, then an ammo pack, then shotgun shells, that's correct. And the last two are empty. So as I click and drag to replace these, watch what happens, watch over here, watch what happens when I do this. They swap. So what it's doing is it's doing a trifecta, I call it. So create a temporary, put 1 into the temporary, put 2 over top of 1, and then put 2 now from the temporary. Now you've kind of done this little exchange, right? So that's what's happening here. It's just kind of exchanging those. And then when we drop it, we remove it. It's perfect. And then it recreates the thing in the world. We can pick it back up and we just keep going. So let's take a look at how that swapping works for the inventory. So we talked about the UI dragging, so that one's good to go. You're all set there. So that's just the moving back and forth of the actual images. But then to actually shuffle our inventory, here's how this works. So we'll talk about the inventory shuffling, and then we're going to talk about the frame. And the frame is actually not too bad. So here's all this is right here. It's very simple. So for the remove from inventory, this gets called from the UI dragger when we say, hey, I've dragged this thing outside of the boundaries. That means I need to do something. So what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, let's clear out the slot. And let's get the loot pickup thing, the thing that we're going to instantiate on the ground. Let's get that information from this slot. Then we can clear the slot out. We're done with it. We know what we need to do. Then we're going to instantiate that loot pickup thing at the player's position with no rotation. So just put it on the floor as it is. There you go, nice and easy. So if you want to swap items in your inventory, here's that little trifecta thing I talked about. Create a temporary variable and fill it with slot number 2. Then fill slot number 2 with the contents of slot number 1. Then fill slot number 1 with the contents of the temporary variable. There you go. So that's how you swap 2 items in your inventory. Now, let's talk about the frame for a quick second here. So if I pick up some items, boop, 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 and let's go over here and open up the inventory UI. You can see here they all are. And let's talk about the wood resource one first. So as you can see, we did this last time, I believe. I'll double check, but I'll go over it now just in case. So each of these inventory UI icons is an image. That's what this UI image, see, image script. But we're using this as a kind of like a holder, a container for some children images. Little confusing. But these are images as well, but we're not actually using them. You can see they're these garish colors for testing purposes. But the image we're actually using is another image that is their children. And so these are the actual images you're seeing on the screen, these icons here. And they're in 2 categories. So we have the selected and unselected. And essentially, the code is saying for each of these, when the frame moves, get the inventory tile that is at that same position, and then set its selected to enabled. See, right now selected is disabled, and unselected is enabled, or set active, pardon me, is the proper term. So that being said, its children will be visible or invisible correspondingly. Now, if I hit the 1 key on the keyboard, I've now moved the frame to that position. So now the selected is true, and its child is showing. And the unselected is false, and its child is not showing. Now for the leaf icon here that I made, the 2 are identical, they're just different sizes. So you'll notice that the unselected icons are always going to be 80 by 80, and then the selected icons are going to be 92 by 92. They're just a little bit bigger so that they kind of puff out a little bit to kind of provide extra emphasis that there they are. So the same is true for, let's go to the pack ammo one, take a look at that one. So for this one, yeah, there's 92 and there's 80. So you can see it moved just a little bit there because it's just a little bit smaller in order to show emphasis. So what our code is actually doing is when I hit the button, it's moving the frame, and it's going to move the frame based upon the index of these positions that we already have stored because we stored them earlier. And then it's going to say, hey, if you go to say slot number 2, which is inventory slot _1, second in the array, and if your position is negative 138 on the X, then get me the inventory icon that is at that position. So for this case, it's inventory ammo pack, as you can see here. So then it says, okay, hey, thing at that position, this guy, turn your selected on, turn your unselected off. And that's all it's doing. So now if I hit 2, boop, there you go, 3, 4, etc. Now, what you'll have to do from here that I'll leave in your capable hands is take this and then tell it in code, what do I do from that point? And I'll show you where in code you can call that. So now let's go ahead and look at the code. So that all happens up here. And I apologize, there's not really a better way to do this with a case statement that I know of. I'm still learning myself because I need specific input from getKey, and I can't capture a current input with a variable that I'm aware of. If you know a way to do this and clean this up, please, by all means, let me know or post me new code. Please share it. That's the whole point, is that we're learning together. So, up here we do need a private for the game object slot frame. Okay? Then down here we're going to instantiate that. So in the start, we're going to say, hey, slot frame is equal to find the game object in the scene called slot frame. Makes sense. That way it's automatic for you. You don't have to do any of the drag and drop to connect. People seem to have trouble with that, so I don't want to cause confusion. So then down here, underneath in our update, underneath our inventory view screen, we're going to get our keys 1 through 6, and we're going to do some stuff. Now, as a note, I left a note here. For some reason, when I go up here and slot centers, I'm getting an array. So this is getting the array of these center objects. So it says inventory UI area, which is this thing, inventory UI, get components in children. Get the components of its children, which means the objects underneath of it. So that's 0 through 5 here. For some reason, this array that I'm not aware of returns 0 as being the parent itself, and then 1 as being this 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's just ridiculous. But because of that, I put here, we ignore the 0 index because for some reason, a list of its children includes itself. I would never count my children, myself among them. That's just odd. So, that being said, our first position here will actually be the number 1 in the index. So, even though it is a 0-based array, it's a little confusing that it's backwards here a little bit. So, anyway, if we hit number 1, we're going to say, okay, slot frame, your position is now going to be equal to, of our array, the first in our array, get its position. So, set your position equal to this, and then call our function called update icon with a number 1. Same thing for 2 through 6, okay? So what does update icon do? Here it is. We're going to get a list of everything in the scene that has the tag UI draggable, which, as we know, are those inventory icons when we pick them up. Then I'm going to say, okay, go through each of those. And first, let's set them all to unselected. And this happens so rapidly, you won't be able to tell. But we're going to say selected icons are equal to the first element, 0 element, and the unselected equal to 1. So what does that mean? So here, I'll show you. I want to be clear and make sure you guys understand. So if I pick these things up, right? Now what I'm doing in code is saying, go to this thing and get its children. So the first child in the array is this word selected. So when I say, as we talked about, 0 index arrays, first child, 0 child, get that and call it selected. It's always going to be selected because that's the way that I structured it, right? And then get the second child. Okay, get this guy, unselected. And we're going to call that unselected icon. Amazing, I know. So then we're going to say, for the unselected icon that you gathered, set its, for the selected icon you gathered, set its activity to false. For the unselected, set it to true. So we're making everything unselected at first. We're making them all the 80 by 80 icons. Then we're going to say, if your position.x is equal to the position that we passed in, so we're going to pass in this int of slot number. So if your position.x is equal to this particular slot center's x position, then we're going to do the inverse here, and selected is going to be true and unselected is going to be false. That's it. So in plain English, we're saying we've got get me all of these that are on the screen, so all 3 of these, and we're going to say, okay, immediately set them all to unselected. But then if I've hit a key, so say 2, it's going to say go through each of these, and if you happen to have the same X position as the frame, which the frame is at, well, you can't tell there because the numbers are different, but the frame is currently at the ammo pack position, so negative 138, which means, oh, the ammo pack's like, hey, I'm at 138, so it's like, okay, cool. Set your selected to true and set your unselected to false, because you are the currently selected item. Now, there's a couple of flaws that these are things that I'll leave to you guys to bonus homework type stuff. What happens here when I pick up an item for the first time? It's in the first slot, but I haven't hit 1 yet. But now when I hit 1, it gets a little bigger because now it's actually selected. So all you'd have to do there is when you pick something up, so we'd have to go to the add to inventory. You have to figure out if this is the first item at all that you have. So you could do some math in here to say, if this first free slot comes back as slot 0, which means that's the first available slot, and there's nothing else in the other slots, then we can basically pass a 1 automatically. We could just run this code in that spot. But you'd have to make sure that there's nothing else in your inventory, because otherwise if I pick up, for example, if I pick up 2 items, there you go, and I move this item to here, and I hit 6, that means that now this is the selected item, and I drop this. Now when I pick up another item, it's going to put number 1 in that slot because that's the first available. But I have currently selected this. So it has to be some kind of flag that says from game start, make sure that it's the first time that I pick it up or something like that. So I'll leave that as a bonus question for you guys to help us figure out, but it's not difficult. So that's one thing. And then there was another thing. I forget what the other thing is now that I wanted to do for you guys, but that's essentially, the other thing is, now that you pick these things up and when you select them, you now need to figure out what you're going to do about that. So these are all kind of resource type things, really. So none of these would really be a pickup item per se, but I just used these models because I had them from a previous episode and wanted to show you kind of how picking things up would work. But technically, these should be, if it's a pickup item, especially for something like Fortnite or any slot-based inventory, you would then have to take this and say, now this is a weapon or this is an item I need to keep in my inventory. So from there, when you pick it up, so down here, I'll show you where to make that change. When you add it to your inventory, then you'd have to say, now that I've done all this stuff, add inventory icon, I would then say, here's a future development, right? What to do now that we have this item. So that's something for you guys to figure out, and I'll be around to answer questions here and there, but we have so many other episodes I need to get to, but I wanted to give you guys some stubs that you can then learn from. So I'll leave that in there for you, but this is the spot where we would say, okay, we've added this item, so now what do we do about that? So that's when you would have to reach into the character and play an animation. You would have to have some spawn a weapon in their hands or something like that, right? And you have to change it based upon which item we select too. So it's not just pick it up. Picking it up should make it active, and then making it active should change animations and things on the player as well. But this gives you a great foundation of actually having items in an inventory, being able to pick them up, being able to drop them in the world, being able to change things as you go, and then say, now that I have these items, what do I do with this setup? And don't forget to use your scriptable objects because they're very powerful with the huge list of things you can give them without having to do too much extra work. And then you can pass them around just like this. And then look at how powerful they are. They have all kinds of information stored in them. And I can do this on the fly. It's super smooth. And just say, there we go. I'll pick up this item, and it all works really well. So be sure to use the power of Unity to your advantage here, and make sure that you're taking full advantage of the extensibility of the system. So that's all we have for this week, guys. I really hope you guys have enjoyed. I will post up these 2 scripts for you that have changed. So remember to make changes to your scripts. If you need to update your current scripts with a new one, here's what you have to do. A reminder. So find out where your script is being used. So for example, the inventory manager script is being used here on the mechanics. So what you have to do is right click here and say remove, then go into your project here, into the scripts and delete it. And then when you've downloaded the new one, drag and drop it into here. Click in Unity somewhere, you might see the icon in the bottom corner of it compiling. When that's done, it should be finished. Then click back on BRS Mechanics and then click and drag to add the script. Okay? Then everything will be back to normal. So you'll have to do that for BRS Mechanics, which is here for the inventory manager. Then on your camera, make sure you right click and remove the UI element dragger script from here and do the same thing. Delete it from here and then click and drag it back over. Those 2 things being said, and make sure in your element dragger that based upon your screen setup, I think it has to do something with the screen setup and the screen size, that you do this trick here. Reminder, these are the numbers you need to change, so just fill in these values in between this bracket and the F here for the float. Fill in these numbers based upon your left, right, bottom, and top values. To get these values, you have to go to line 71, uncomment this, like this. I'll do it one more time just to kind of drive this point home. Uncomment it, and then run the game. And now pick up an item, it doesn't matter what you pick up, and just click and drag it, and without letting go, put your cursor around the edges of this area and get the numbers that it gives you. Okay? So look at these numbers. And remember, the first two, you're looking for the first set of numbers. So this is like 800. And over here is 1130. And then the next two numbers you want top and bottom. So this is going to be 95 and then 30 something, right? So then if you take those numbers and you plug them in up here. So see, so bottom and top. So plug those in here and then it should work for you. And you may have to finagle these a little bit, make it slight adjustments, salt to taste, that kind of thing. But this is the area where you do that. And then 71, this is the line you can uncomment. I'm going to comment it out for now. You can uncomment to actually get the readout, okay? So with those two things set, you should be all set and ready to go and have a great inventory system. Please share with us all of the improvements and changes and updates you make and anything that you create with this. I want to see pictures. It's always cool to kind of see what people are doing with the system and see that it's working well for them. And we will continue, and there will be a full, complete version of this with all the bells and whistles for the final asset that will be up for sale at some point in the future. But we have a lot more to do, so we're going to keep going with the pilgrimage, keep going with the series. So we'll leave the inventory system as is for now, but I look forward to you guys improving it and showing you all the cool stuff that you make. So until next time, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.